So do not try and bend the spoon. That is impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth. There is no spoon. Then you'll see that it is not the spoon that bends, but it is only yourself. So this is from the movie The Matrix, as hopefully most of you recall. As I present this slide in different places, I invite people to replace the spoon with the word data, just to tease them a little. Because we all think that data is real and it has to do with reality, and I'm going to argue that it is not quite the same thing. So, where to start? So I just, you see me on the program. My name is Marco Wobben, and how am I going to speak about no data? And I'm going to start this off with this slide that says I am not Marco Wobben. Most people will recognize that. Some might be a little confused because Marco Wobben is actually just my name. That's data. I am more than data, and I have kids. I have a dog. I have a girlfriend. I have a house. I have a car. I have a life. I have feelings. All of that is my reality. And so when you see Marco Wobben and I'm stating that I'm not that, I'm saying I am not that piece of data, just to distinguish data from reality. And it applies to many, many things. So I'm going to try and peel your minds a little bit and open up a few doors that to explain where this message is going. Is we can all look back in our childhood and probably remember, if I was bigger and older, if only I was a teenager, I could do things. And this thought kind of propels through life, because as soon as you're a teenager, you want to be an adult, because then you can do really some serious stuff. And but all of that is an illusion, because some point, once you're an adult, we all realize we just want to be the cat. So what's happening in our minds that causes this? And it's simply part of human nature that we always think that somewhere else the grass is greener. And this continuous looking to a different area creates a sort of blindsidedness, let's put it that way. We only look forward and start chasing the next, in our profession, the next gadget, the next tool, the next data warehouse solution, or iteration, or technique to solve our problems. It's always greener on the other side. And while we do that, we forget that whatever we're looking at, it is just this image of our potential solution to an experience problem, and we don't always realize that there is a disconnectedness in choosing that single image. And I am going to speak about that a little bit. So where did all of this start? I mean, we have cave paintings of people. We have archaeological site of old cities. No computers, but yet there seemed to be information, because it was exchanged. It was painted on walls. It was chiseled in stone. And I call that just the manual information. It's the verbal. It's the orally transferred stories. And of course, because of the mechanical revolution, of the technical revolutions, we switched slowly from that to a mechanical information, the printing press, for instance. And shortly after that, I mean, in a blink of an eye, we invented computers, and all that information became electronic information. And as you can see, we humans, we live with information, we breathe information, we tell each other stories, and we find that everywhere. So information rules, so to speak. Now, if information rules, then, I'm being playful here. What about the rules themselves? Well, since we invented what is information or not, we probably are the culprits of making rules. And there's something funny about it. Because if rules are made by humans, and this is a picture of a heated debate in Taiwan Parliament, which really depicts the way of politics within this country, is sometimes there is really no rule. Luckily, even in business, we have experts of rules. They interpret law, and dissolve ambiguity, hopefully. Although in some countries, even the experts can be found to be a little biased. But we have experts generally. So if everybody knows the rules, then what's the real problem? What could go wrong? And again, I'm pointing back to humans. And it's nice to hear about the ethics, and there's an increase of need of ethics, but we will always be confronted with we're humans, and where some people will think there's nothing wrong, someone else might say, hey, you're breaking the rules here. So there's a trend that you will recognize, is that let's apply some algorithms and have our machine decide what is right and what's wrong. So machines run our rules. So, and again, what could go wrong? Well, if you've seen the Space Odyssey 2001, you may remember HAL. And a more recent movie that came out is called Upgrade. Now, if you have the stomach to look at horror and blood, I would recommend that movie. Again, it's the machine running on rules made by humans. And it just shows that even though we're optimistic and love technology, we barely ever see the whole picture. And I have a general idea about why that happens. Of course, we have a limited CPU, but everybody might remember this child game. I think in English it's called Chinese Whispers. It goes by different names in different countries. You whisper something in someone's ear, and that propels until at the end of the circle someone speaks out what they think they heard, and things get lost in communication. Now, the interesting part is this is just a metaphor, because this is actually what happens in our own minds as well. There is a certain disconnect between reality that is creating the input to our senses, the illusion that then takes place in our brain, because it's trying to interpret the senses. Then with that illusion, it creates thoughts. It runs scenarios. It's doing historical comparison, and then there's action. But there's really a big gap between what the reality is and how our actions flow from that. In a way, you could say we all fly by wire. We have this gray computer in our skull, and that's doing all the interpretation, the thought process, and the planning of actions. And like I showed before, is that computers are not always that good, because we make up the rules, including what's in our mindsets. So what do? We experience a problem, and we, as humankind is tool users, tool builders as a species, we immediately look around, like, what tool can we use to solve this? And for instance, this picture depicts a drill set. Great, you can drill holes with it, but what was the real purpose? It's not about drilling the hole. Yes, we need it to make a hole, but the real purpose was to maybe hang our painting on the wall. And again, this focus needs to be checked all the time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different ways to focus on what is needed in an organization, and you may recognize some of them. And I'd invite you to type in the chat the hash number and what you think is so great about whatever you see on the screen. And I'm not going to iterate all the pros and cons, so I'll leave that to you. So the organization, yes, it is definitely more than all its parts, and there are different ways to model parts. There is a traditional way that says that you have the entity relationship diagram that says, I have this object and it has a relationship with something else, and the whole graph is being built like that. And there's a, I don't know if it's called a successor or a parallel invention. There was NIAM, a binary notation that says, well, everything is a binary relation. Everything is connected through a fact with something else. And again, these all take the smallest parts to work with. And talking about smaller parts more in the hearts and minds of the data warehouse people in this community, perhaps, is the anchor modeling, a great way to model on the smallest grain all the requirements in regards to data and their relationships, including notations for time travel and all of that. But Lars can tell you a lot more about that. Current trends is to break it down in a different way, to do graph modeling. I have a node and I have an edge, and everything is connected to everything. But does that really all represent what an organization is? No, of course not. And does that allow us to work better with it? Yes, sometimes it all has its goal and its purpose, and it's all solving a specific problem. So let's see if we can cluster a little bit. Let's look at components, and one way to do that is logical modeling, whether that is the layer of the conceptual or the logical or the physical. I don't care at this point. It's grouping certain elements together into one entity or one table. We can do that same strategy for software development. We put it together in classes, slightly different organized than a logical diagram. But again, is that the reality of the organization, or is that, again, just one focus on one method and one tool? Now, how about the manuals? The manuals are great. We can read about it. We can read all about it. And so we can start building our business glossaries, the collections of data-related terms, their definitions, and all the metadata that comes with it. Or move to a different dialect that says SBVR, Standard Business Vocabulary. My brain kind of lost track of the abbreviation. I'm sure Ron Ross still remembers. So all in written text through categorization and classification. And again, it's been around for a couple of years, but it's getting more traction. Is the OWL, the semantic web, that is so great to feed all kinds of machine learning algorithms, etc. So maybe dashboards. And of course, I hear some people smile in their minds, because dashboards, what are they really? It's just one small narrow view for one specific function. A way to represent what we have in a different way on a high level would be, for instance, a concept map. That's really taking a distance from all the elements or compounds or components. We can look at it in a different way that says, well, we have all these systems, and let's bring all that together in a data catalog. That's on a technical level, and then start trying to annotate that. But again, it's just one focus. Different parties will argue that everything starts with the business process. So they have business process modeling as a starting point. And here again, it's, yeah, but how does it connect with your data? So again, it's just another focus. So if you want to do all this and you want to face the business, then, ensemble modeling, to get a start on what needs to be done, for instance, in an enterprise data warehousing, is a very good start to get people talking. But again, it's where the focus lies in getting that knowledge out. if it's a different kind of approach like beam modeling, all of that can be done, but it doesn't cover the whole story. Now, I'm from a different school. I like fact-oriented modeling, so I had to include some of that. The signs of facts, yes, but again, the organization is way more than just that. There are different flavors in fact-oriented modeling. We in the United States, there's object rule modeling, and in the Netherlands, in tradition with NIAM, in the 90s, we developed FCOIM, which is a different flavor of fact-oriented modeling, but still, again, that is part of the whole story. So try to piece all of that together is quite a challenge. And there are different frameworks to do that. We need to answer all the repetitive what, why, where, when, who, how, and how much, etc., questions to integrate all of that and answer all of that. Now, a perspective would be the Zachman framework. It has the typical what, how, where, who, when, why, but it doesn't fit all our needs. We can do the TOGAF approach, which is a system design method to develop systems that can be extended with systems. So it's very generic, and again, it's one of the many approaches. Dama has written a thick book about data management, the body of knowledge, and it uses a wheel to talk about all the different aspects of data. Again, it's an approach. Quoted in one of the chats in sessions is the data quadrant model by Ronald Damhoff, who makes it very easy to talk about data that is in rest and data that is moving, and are we looking at organized data or unorganized data. A very convenient tool to talk about different aspects in data. And if you want to really go crazy, this is an inspiration in many ways, because you can look at it and you go crazy, but as soon as you think you know what's going on here, you discover something else. So Martijn Evers, who's the brilliant mind behind this, did some amazing work that just propels my brain forever forward. A little bit more closer to home is what I drafted as a roadmap for my own product development, is that there are different aspects that come to data modeling in documenting what is needed, documenting what are the sources, providing support to document rules, business process modeling, all different aspects that come into play. But in reality, we're all a little blindsided because we tend to look from our own window into the world. And the reality is a lot of repeated manual labor is still being done on a day-to-day, no matter how many tools. All the integration between all the approaches, the components, the parts, all of that is still being done by hand again and again. And this is a cartoon that everybody will recognize, is that if everybody has a different perspective, will we come to the solution where we realize that this is one big elephant? I seriously doubt it. I hope that point will be reached, because until we do, we have a miscommunication going on between the various parties in the business and IT, or in IT itself. So the truth is, there's just more to communication than just data. And this picture shows it beautifully. We sometimes worry about the next generation that is so addicted to their devices and social media, and it doesn't really communicate. I think that in a way is going on as a trend between different factions in IT or different approaches. There is a lot still need to be done. And Ron Ross said it beautifully, the quality of data can never be any better than the quality of the communication that produced it. So we really need to figure out how to communicate across method, across tools, and across places where data is being used to really integrate that whole story. And one way of doing that is to recognize there are domain-specific languages. There are departments that are so specific in their needs and administrative use of data. They require their own language. But as soon as that department starts working with a different department, there is a connection that we would call shared domain language. And if you dig long enough and align and standardize the use of words and how to communicate, we will develop a shared common language across data, across uses, etc. One way of doing that is to go through the process of going from human communication to formal, to facts, to logical models, etc. The most important part, of course, is that within every stage that you go through, connecting one with the other, is that you continuously have to support communication itself. So, opening the next toolbox. Yeah, it kind of depends on how you do that. If you think that the next evolution or next technical tool or method will solve all your problems, and you open that box and you are not aware of how it fits in the bigger picture, all you might be left with, like with Pandora's box, is just hope that it might work. And giving you this broad overview of IT and what we really need to do, I do hope, and I'm quoting Kennedy here, is that I pray not for easy lives, but pray to be stronger men. And that, I think, ties in with the ethics parts, not just about what are we doing with data, but also in our profession is what are we doing in the first place.